I have an awesome photo from the series Vikings, and this character in the series was called Porwin. I'm going to select her by using the select subject feature, which does a very quick selection using Adobe Sensei, the artificial intelligence selection. So it's a really cool selection already. We can turn this into a mask by clicking on the Japanese flag on the bottom right, and then double click on the mask icon, which will open the select and mask work area. And within there, let's select the refine edge brush tool. Shortcut is R. And let's just zoom a little bit closer and paint over all of this fur detail. So it's a brilliant tool to get these details back, and also maybe refine the hair here on the right side and there. I think that looks quite nice. Also here we get that gap. And I think that's all good. That's all we needed. So we can click on OK. Now we can refine the mask a little bit further by Alt Option clicking on the thumbnail for the mask. And then if you select the Burn tool and set the range to shadows, you can very quickly eliminate any halo around the edges that was created with the refine edge. And then similarly to that, if you select the Dodge tool and set the range to highlights, and start painting around the edges, you can make sure that there are no transparent details, especially around the hair. If that's still not enough and you feel like this should be white, just use the brush tool and paint over with white. So something like that. Let's just see how this looks. If I Alt or Option click back on the mask, I think that looks quite nice. All right, so now it's time to combine the photo and the text and make it look like the character is coming out of this letter. So in a way, the text is going to be like a holding device. So let's just select the image and place it on top of the text first of all. The text layer I'm going to set to 100% opacity. And what we will do is to add another mask on this layer by creating a group for it. That's Command or Control G. And on that group, I will add the mask. I like to keep my mask separate. So the first one was just simply for isolating it from the background. The second one is specifically to align it with the composition. So I'm going to use the brush tool, and I'm just going to very quickly brush over these details here, which I definitely don't want to see. Something like that. And then I'm going to create a quick selection of my text layer by Command or Control clicking on the thumbnail of the text layer. This way I can delete those details that overlap the text. So something like this, and go around here, probably hide these details as well. Okay. All I need is to show the hand on the left side and also here on the right side to create an interesting overlap or depth effect. So now I can use Command or Control D to deselect this, zoom a little bit closer, and then using the same mask that I used before, I am going to switch to white by pressing X on the keyboard and just very quickly paint over the hand. Yeah, something like that. And all I have to do now is to refine this selection. I normally would create a path as well with the pen tool and then draw around that. But here on this side, I'm just going to use the brush tool and just very quickly paint over it. So something like that. I'm not spending too much time refining it because you will get the idea. So I think that looks quite nice. So without the masking, obviously it was like this. And with that additional mask, now it looks like that. But we need to fix the other arm here. So once again, I'm going to use the brush tool, switch to white by pressing X and reveal the hand. Okay, so there's the hand. And then the fur probably can also come out of bounds and be somewhere around there. I think that will work quite nicely. And see, that's why it's good to have two separate masks, because when I reveal these details, I'm not revealing the original background. I am only revealing the already masked out details. So now that we have this selection, again, we can refine it. And this time I'm going to use the pen tool just to be a bit more precise. Set to path mode. I am going to start drawing the selection here and zoom a little bit closer so we can see what I'm doing. Essentially, I'm just drawing around these details very quickly. And then let's move down. I'm creating curves, and holding down space bar, you can reposition your anchor points. So you can see how quickly and effectively we can make this selection. Something like that. Okay, again, I'm not doing a perfect job because I'm trying to show you this very quickly, but hopefully you get the idea how it works. So here we have this one more detail, and then it can be a little bit more faster on these details. No one will notice how it was originally. Okay, something like that. I think that works nicely. And then we just have to make a big selection around this and then press Command or Control Return or Enter, which will turn this into a selection. And all the details inside this needs to be kept, but all the details outside of it can be hidden. So we will invert the selection by pressing Command or Control Shift I. And then using black as our foreground color, we can very quickly paint over all of these details that we don't need. Then Command or Control D to deselect, and then zoom closer, just fixing a few more things here. I think this can be hidden away, make that edge a little bit more believable, and also around here. I think something like that tidies it up nicely. Okay, so let's zoom out and take a look. I think it looks quite nice. That was before and after. And once again, like before, I'm going to save this as a Photoshop file without the background. So keep the background completely transparent. And then let's place this into our InDesign composition. Here it is, and it already looks badass, but what I'm going to do is to increase the size a bit, and we can combine the techniques we've learned. So we can also use the text wrap, probably around here. If we go to Window, Text Wrap, and then turn on the same feature we used before. And in this case, because it's a Photoshop file, we have to also make sure it uses the alpha channel, which is based on the masks that we created. And then let's not forget about the offset, which we used before as well, something like that. So let's take a look at this in full screen. I think that looks awesome. Maybe one last thing that I would add is a drop shadow on the letter. So if you are in InDesign and you want to go back and make changes to your Photoshop composition, you can just hold down the Alt or Option key and double click on it. That goes back into Photoshop. And there, what we can do is to add an additional layer above the text, clip it onto it by holding down again Alt or Option and click. That creates the clipping mask, and then use the brush tool and maybe select the same color that you used on the text, but set the blend mode of this layer to multiply. And that way, when you are drawing with a soft big brush and probably a low opacity like 20%, you can start building up a nice shadow. So here around this part, I'm going to make it darker, maybe even reduce the brightness of the color. So adding a little bit more shading there, and the same thing here on this side. I'm just building up this effect nicely, something like that. Here I'm going to make it even darker, and by the way, I'm using the HUD color picker shortcut. That's Command, Control, Option, click and drag on Mac, and I think it's Alt, Shift, right click on PC, but I'm not 100% sure about the PC version. So it's called HUD color display shortcut. So there it is. I'm going to reduce it even more in that corner. Okay, so now let's save these changes, Command or Control S, and go back into InDesign, and we can see our shadows are showing up nicely here as well.